I'm Brian Freise alongside Laura Duncan, and you're listening to the Triggered and True podcast. This is a podcast that's all about you, discovering you, going back for you, being with you. You're more than the pain you've experienced, the behaviors you're expressing, and the thoughts that run through your head. Together, we will find your true self, which has always been with you. It's just been covered up. Tune in as we show you how to feel your pain, get comfort, and go play as you return to you. It's time to transform from triggered to true. Hello, Laura. How are you doing today?
Doing pretty good. Excited to record today.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, today's topic is something that, as a lot of our topics tend to be, they're things that have been coming up in my life and kind of revelations I've had as I kind of read through notes and some of our one-on-one sessions that we had. So this is kind of a little bit of a different twist. So the title of today's podcast says, "We will treat others the way we treat ourselves." So I want everybody to just think about that. So we will treat others the way we treat ourselves. So it's a little bit of a different spin on the golden rule, which is do unto others as you would have them do unto you. So why don't you just kind of break that down? Like this is just coming at something very similar, a little bit different way.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, the golden rule is that we are going to treat others the way, that we want to treat others the way that we treat ourselves. And I remember reading that before, and it always was more of like, you know, because I don't know how I interpret it this way, but maybe you did too, but it always was like this, like, don't be selfish, kind of like if you want something, or if you want something to be a certain way, that's how you need to treat other people. For some reason, that's kind of how I saw it.
It almost feels a little manipulative. Is that what you're saying?
It kind of actually does. I didn't necessarily think of it that word, but
if I don't want people to treat me selfishly, I'm just going to be a very unselfish person, and then
yes, and that's what you're supposed to
hopefully
do.
the universe sends that back to me, right?
Yeah, well, kind of in a way, it's like kind of like you need to treat other people if you want to be treated well. So it is a form of manipulation and a form of lack too, where you're like, okay, if I want to be loved, if I want to have a relationship, then I have to treat others the way that I'd want to be treated so that they can treat me the same in return. But it never really works
Well, it's
because
kind of like if your gas tank isn't filled with
yes,
love and filled with all of that already,
yes,
you're trying to give out of an empty tank.
yeah. And also another thing it reminded me of is like, like the book, The Five Love Languages. Do you remember that book?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Gary
Yeah.
Chapman.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So the five love languages. So it also felt very unproductive because I'm like, okay, I haven't actually done that, read that book in a while. So I forget what mine are, but like, it would be like, if I really want like, quality time, then I'm going to give this person all the quality time because I want to love them the way I want to be loved. So here I am giving all this quality time, and they're like, I don't really, quality time isn't my love language, so I don't really care. So they're not going to love me back with quality time, back to the manipulation in a way of like, they're not going to love me back with quality time. They're just going to love me however they see themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So now they're loving me from whatever way they love, and I'm loving them from whatever way I want to be loved. But we're actually not loving each other because we're so busy trying to love others to be loved.
We're so busy trying to get the lack in our own hearts
Yes,
filled.
exactly. Yes. So
Yeah.
it always felt like kind of like a formula that didn't quite work.
Yeah. Well, and I think one of the things you talk a lot about is okay, so we can try to treat others in all those ways, unselfishly,
Yes.
all those things. But if that isn't living inside of us, it will wear us out eventually.
Yes, exactly.
And when we get triggered, guess what's going to happen?
Yep. All the good intentions go out the window.
Yeah, right, right. And one of the things I notice a lot when I'm in that place of not connected to my heart or my true self is, and what's really cool about since I started the compassion method is how much more aware of this I am and how I can
Mhm.
I can stop it in its tracks like immediately.
Yeah.
But the one big one is judgment.
Oh, for sure.
So when I hear other people speaking harshly about someone, I remember you said something once. You said the judgment we have for others is really how we see ourselves.
Yes, exactly.
It's a mirror image thing. So if you want to
Hmm.
expound on that a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. Like I kind of, relate it to also like, the soapbox we get on, but also like the judgment that we have, the criticism, the, hatred. I know we don't usually like to use that word because it's so strong, but it is a form of hatred. It's a form of criticism, judgment, all those feelings that we have ultimately about ourselves is what we're projecting out. And we may put it in like a different package, to be more, you know, to feel like we're loving still, but we're still in those harsh words, in the what we're communicating to others. It's really a reflection of ourselves. If you asked a person in the moment, they would not relate to it at all because they would say, no, it's about that other person, just like how we see blame is about the other person. But it's really the self judgment that we have within ourselves that causes us to end up judging that person. So, pretty much anything that we see in another person that we judge or we don't like is ultimately something about ourselves that we're judging or we don't like.
Absolutely. And that's a hard pill to swallow
Yeah.
because people don't want to go there.
No, it's so much easier to blame and say that and then we have our cases, like our, like, well, they did this, this, and this. So therefore, my judgments are valid. But it's not so much. Remember how we've talked about like you can judge what someone does, but there's something different about judging who a person is
Right.
by that. And that when we judge who a person is, it's ultimately because we're judging who we are.
Yeah. And we're operating in that world of the knowledge of good and evil and the shame cycle.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Because shame is, ascribing a person's behavior to their identity.
Yes,
Like,
exactly. And so we're actually disqualifying the person because we feel disqualified.
like I had a situation the other day, someone was calling a person a narcissist. And I was like, okay, no, wait a second. I don't like calling people that name because that's not who people are.
Yeah,
Can someone be acting? Are
100%.
they
Yes.
displaying narcissistic behaviors? Yes.
Hmm.
But to put that label on someone is so
Yeah.
harsh. And we're going to hit this over and over again, but why I really believe the compassion method has broke this down so well for me is because I've learned to have that compassion for myself
Yeah.
of like, hey, there's more to my story. There's a reason why I did X, Y, or Z.
Yeah.
And let's go after that reason.
Yeah.
Apologize, own my behavior, obviously, but then let's go
Yeah.
after why that behavior happened in the first place, what was going
Yes.
on inside of me.
Hmm.
And as I do, I recognize, okay, there's a reason here, there's a pain, there's an unmet need.
Yeah.
Let's get to the root of it. And as I get to the root of it, I recognize that everybody has a pain or an unmet
Hmm.
need,
Yeah.
and everyone's just acting out of it. And my ability to have empathy for other people is like
Yeah.
if someone said like what's one of the biggest takeaways of the compassion method, it's that. Because
Yeah.
I feel like I have so much more freedom in the area of judgment,
Yeah.
and I'll catch myself maybe starting to do it and I'll just back up the bus and be like, okay, wait a
Hmm.
second. What's going on
Yeah.
inside of me? Because I'll recognize that, it really starts with me.
Yeah.
That's where this is
Exactly.
coming from.
Yeah.
And we had a really interesting listener question come in a little while ago, and I just want to read it. This person says they found our podcast and they're working through the episodes. They just got through episode 9. And this question about made me cry. This person asked, what if your true self is a bad person?
Yeah.
What if we won't like what we find? So if someone's judging themselves that harshly,
Yeah.
odds are that's coming out somewhere else.
Yeah.
Or they're
For
trying
sure.
really hard to be good, and
Yeah.
yeah, it was a really hard question to read because it was it's hurtful to think that somebody thinks that of
Yeah.
themselves, but it's an
And
easy question to answer.
exactly. Yeah. I was going to say that. I was going to say, like, yeah, it's so hard to read, but then being able to know exactly where to go with it, connected to true self and connected with how that listener was feeling about themselves.
So my reply was, as to your question, I can tell you are in a lot of pain and you are covering this pain with shame. When we are hurting, we tend to revert to blame to unload the pain elsewhere. Some blame others, Some blame themselves, which is ultimately what shame is. And then I said, it is an absolute impossibility for your true self to be a bad person. Your true self is amazing, wonderful, and one of a kind. I encourage you to continue this journey so you can learn how truly special you are. And then I suggested the following podcast episodes 40, 41, and 37 in that order. And then, of course, episode 44 to learn about some of the other resources that are available. So, and then I just encouraged them to continue on this compassion journey, continue on through the
Yeah.
discovery. But I mean, it is like when I said it's an absolute impossibility, it
Mm-hmm.
is like we
Yeah.
weren't created by accident. Like there's
Yeah.
nothing about us that was a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
We make a lot of mistakes.
Of course. No, that is
We
definitely
make a lot of mistakes,
happening.
but
But we're not a mistake.
no human being on the planet, even if it was an unplanned pregnancy and people say, well, it was an act or a mistake or whatever, is no, you are not a mistake.
No, never.
No, no, you are not
And
a
you just
mistake.
think about how you're seeing yourself from that lens. If we take it back to the golden rule of love your neighbors, you love yourself. And if you believe there's nothing, there could be nothing good about you, or not even good, but nothing of value, nothing of worth, that maybe you're going to find something evil or wrong or bad, we're going to love others in that same suspicious way, that
Mm-hmm.
same way of wondering if there's something that I'm not going to find about myself that's, if I'm not going to see something evil about myself, then I'm ultimately going to be wondering if I'm going to see that about others too.
Mm-hmm. Well, and a quote that you share a lot, and it's a quote that's been around a long time. I don't know where it ever originated, but um, you say it a lot. To know yourself is to love yourself.
Yeah.
And it's an absolute impossibility that if you can get to know yourself,
Yeah. You will love
your
yourself.
love for
Yeah.
yourself will grow. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a we're not able to see ourselves clearly because of the shame, like you talked about, that's covering us up. So it creates a lens that we see ourselves by what we do. And when we
Yeah.
see ourselves by what we do, then we do believe that at the root of who we are, there's something wrong or bad.
So as I closed out with her, the to know yourself is to love yourself, I said, this is as certain as the sun rising tomorrow, probably even more so.
Oh, I love
Yeah.
that.
Because that is the truth. And I
Yeah.
think, and I know, why, how you start this off is, with the going after your child self, reconnecting to your child self. And, that was definitely my icebreaker of it's so much easier to have love and compassion on a child
Yeah.
than it is our adult self. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like, how can you judge a 1 year old?
Mm.
You
Yeah.
can't. I like
Yeah.
you can't, no matter what they're
Mm-hmm.
doing. So last night my daughter was over with my grandbaby, and they went to the store, and she's like, oh, are you going to be okay with her? And I'm like, oh, absolutely, no problem. I said, you act like I've never done this before. She left the house, and 90 seconds after she left, she wakes up and she's crying. And she was quite unconsolable for a while. And I'm
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh, I'm eating my words, eating my words. But like, and she was just fussing so bad. I walked with her, and we walked and paced and all the things, right? All the things. Finally, it's like wrestling an alligator sometimes to like find the right hold,
Yeah.
find the right
The right
cadence,
bounce. Yeah.
the right little song to sing, the whatever, all the things, all the things, all the tricks,
Be a fly on that wall.
looking out at the Christmas lights, and that worked for a little bit, and then that didn't work, everything that you can do. And I was just thinking like, oh, she's being really unruly, but like, how could you ever be like mad at her? Like you can't, it's
No,
impossible. Like it's
no.
just like they're just a baby.
Yeah.
And um, so that's why you start there. And obviously,
Mm-hmm.
all of the pain and the unmet need originated from there too. So it's just
Yeah.
such a great opportunity to come home. So I was also looking through some of my notes that I had with you as I was going
Yeah.
through this journey of, really learning to love myself for no other reason than that.
Mm-hmm.
But a wonderful byproduct is I'm going to treat other people a lot better.
Yeah.
A wonderful byproduct. And kind of going back to what we were talking about at the beginning, it's like, it's a little bit having the cart in front of the horse to be like, hey, treat other people the way you want to be treated. If you're like all focusing on the external,
Yeah.
like it's like the cart in front of the horse. Like before the external can really be dealt with, you have to deal with the internal.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a verse somewhere in the Bible that talks about out of the overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like what we have in here is
Yeah. That's a really good scripture that connects to the whole, like, what we have inside of us is what we're going to project on others.
so like one of the things I recognized in my notes, kind of going back through the journey, was at the beginning, especially, I didn't have a high value for myself because I was allowing the external world to set my value.
Yeah.
It's kind of like I was in the marketplace of the world and I was letting all of the people around me, determine how much I
Mm-hmm.
was worth,
Yeah.
how much I was worthy. So it was all connected to performance. How well
Mm-hmm.
was I
So it's
performing?
all subjective and conditional.
Well, some of it's not subjective because, like, if I help a client make a lot of money or avoid a thing, I can actually put a dollar sign to it,
Yeah, but it's
which is
it's a
kind of
dollar
scary.
size subject, exactly. But that's subjective to their success. They're making money.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And then how much money you made? Did you make enough money? Did you
Yeah,
protect me
exactly.
enough?
Because where does it stop? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly right.
yeah.
There's no, yeah. Sometimes I think subjective, like, oh, it can't be measured. Well,
Well,
you're
no,
right.
no,
You're
no.
right.
I
Yeah,
mean, more
right.
it's measured by that standard.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the things that you drove home a lot is that I am the gatekeeper.
Yeah.
I determine my value.
Yeah.
So why don't you just talk a little more about that?
Yeah. And that goes, like we've talked about in the past, like shame highs, shame lows, where like
Mm-hmm.
just a real brief summary is, we do something wrong, we have a shame low. We're all pretty familiar with that. We feel like we are bad because we did this wrong and we feel that pain or that hurt with that. But then a lot of people don't talk about a shame high, that if we do something good, then we're going to feel really good about ourselves. But it's the same conditional, love for ourselves. Well, it's really similar to getting our value from external circumstances as well. So, like, for example, with what you just used, you make a client a lot of money, you're going to feel really valuable. You're going to feel very,
Mm-hmm.
worthy. You're going
Shame
to
high.
feel, yeah,
Shame high.
exactly. You're going to have a shame high with that because you're connected to doing really well. And then when you make a mistake or you don't make someone a lot of money, then they're going to feel like, you're going to feel that low. But that's also connected with how we see ourselves. If our external world determines who we are, when we feel good about who we are, it's the same thing. We're not actually feeling good about who we are, we're feeling good about what we did. And it's so temporary and so fleeting because, like you
Right.
said, it's all performance and
Then you
it's
got to do it
all,
again.
yep. And then
What
what
have you
if
done for
you're,
me lately?
yep. And what if your judges are skewed? What if they're loving you the way they love themselves through judgment, through it's not enough,
Through
through all that
performance. Yeah.
performance? Then now we have this corrupt love system, this exchange
Yeah.
that's happening based on my lack meets their lack. And now we're not in connection anymore. We're actually against one another because we're against ourselves in that. So no
Mm-hmm.
matter how well we communicate through it, we're already, sabotaging that connection before we even start, because how we see ourselves is how we're going to communicate and connect with that person and as they are to ourselves. So I've talked about before how, like, we're always trying to find the better way to communicate it,
Mm-hmm.
where you can't communicate well enough if the root thought is, I judge myself, I hate myself, I don't like who I am. Doesn't matter how you communicate, that's what will be communicated.
And as part of the process, we're bringing in the gift givers that
Mm-hmm.
are giving us the things that we missed out in our early childhood development.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly.
But one of the things I had in my notes is that, we want to bring in, we want to find those mom and dad types that gave us the gift of being enough if our parents weren't able to do it. We want to go back and tangibly feel that gift coming from this person.
Yeah.
One of the things you talked about is you also have to make sure that you are in agreement with the moms
Mm-hmm.
and dads
Yeah.
and not in agreement with self-hatred. So talk a little bit
Yes.
about that, how the 10 gifts process could get kind of worded
Yeah.
if we don't have agreement.
Yeah, no, that is very, very valid because it can all be being given to you. That's why a lot of times people have a hard time finding gift givers because of their own personal rejection and personal self-hatred. They're already processing whatever that person did through that lens. So they either can't see it or they can't receive it because their brain's telling them things like they don't really mean it if they really
Mm,
knew. And when you have those thoughts going through your head, it repels. It's like oil and water. They could be
yeah.
giving you all the things your heart really needs, but because of how you're seeing yourself, you create a protector, a defense system. Because how scary would it be to actually think that they really see you and they really love you for who you are? That's actually scarier than the defenses that we have of they don't really know. They wouldn't really love me. They don't really mean it. That feels safer to us because we feel safe in our self dislike or self hatred versus actually receiving from a gift giver what we really need.
Yeah, it's that puppy with a hurt paw analogy.
Yes, exactly. And so we're pushing away and pushing away. And actually, we are offended many times and even hurt by love. You know, that always seems our logical brain goes, why would you be hurt by love? Unconditional love given to you by someone that cares about you and wants to give you that feeling. But if we have severe self hatred, we have severe lack, it's actually going to be more offensive to receive that than it is to actually keep believing the familiarity of the self hatred.
So how do you identify that's happening? Because a lot of
Yeah.
times people are pushing people away, they don't know it.
Yes, exactly. So when being able to be aware of your pain, like your true need or your true wound, helps you receive. So the defense is if, like, say, for example, if I don't have the gift of enough and someone is giving me that gift, but I don't believe it and I don't see myself that way, then I'm going to say, oh, no, they don't really know. They're just saying that doesn't mean anything. When I'm saying that, that defensive measure is not allowing me to see it. The only way to really see what we need is to feel how we feel our pain, feel how we are in our pain. What does that pain look like? You know, when we do the remote control exercise and we go through and we get to that more tender place, that's where
Mhm.
we're able to start to receive. But because we all stay in reaction so much,
Right.
it creates the defense of being able to receive. So the more tender you're able to feel your pain, the more able you are to be able to receive the gifts or receive compassion.
Yeah. And that's where that compassion statement list comes in so powerfully.
Yes, because it kind of it
It,
I
it
kind of
it's the
it thaws you.
it
Yeah.
thaws you out.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
totally. Thaw, that's a good word. Yeah. You're very hard and resistant, and it's like a meat tenderizer. So
Mm-hmm. And then in connection to going back to our child self, you know, you were saying how we see others through, if we saw them as a child, we think of it differently, but it's
hmm
also connected to going back to how we see ourselves as a child. When you see yourself as a child, it also helps some of that resistance thaw, you know, not be as strong so that we can receive.
Well, and I think a lot of like maybe a goal of someone listening to this podcast is your first step in this whole process is awareness
Yeah.
and just kind of recognizing that you're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And one of your areas of awareness is if you find yourself being harsh towards other people.
Yeah.
Not like what you talked about, like, I have an employee and I have to give them a review and just talk about how their performance is. We're not talking about that.
Yeah.
We're talking about that harsh judgment where
Yes.
you are just, you know, blaming
Yeah.
somebody harshly, that type
Well,
of
it's
thing.
that employee, like just say they're being late. It's saying that you have, you know, like it's making strong conclusions about that. Is it okay to be late? No, but it's when you say you are whatever you're implying that they are, that that's what creates the judgment.
Um, Another one that could probably help with awareness that I had written in my notes, you kind of challenged me. You said if you asked me to say 10 things that I love about myself, I would probably struggle.
Mm-hmm.
So like she said the goal is to rattle, you said, I said she said, you said,
Yeah.
Laura said, the goal is to rattle off positive things just like I would about my kids.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that is such a, like you said, how can we work against that resistance to receiving what we need? That's a huge one. It's like you can't have both happening at the same time. We can't judge ourselves and love ourselves at the same time. And so when you start to say those 10 things that are characteristics of who you are, and you can say it with the same pride and the same pleasure and the same, acceptance of who that person is, you can't judge yourself because you're seeing yourself for who you are, which goes back to if we really knew ourselves, we would love ourselves and there'd be no room for self-hatred.
Hmm. Yeah, and comparing the compassion method process to some other things that I've learned, one of the things I'd written in my notes that this is not just simply speaking affirmations over my life or
Mm-hmm.
way
It doesn't
ways
work.
or ways to encourage myself.
Well, it might work
Or
like temporarily, but as soon as you get triggered, you're right back into that self hatred
yeah.
again. So you can't rally and pep yourself up enough to actually see yourself.
Yeah, and like the only solution here is knowing and discovering, knowing
Yes,
yourself.
exactly. Because
Because if
otherwise,
you
we can
know
argue it.
yourself,
Yeah.
you will love yourself. Like another,
Yes.
like one of those things that's as sure as the sun coming up tomorrow, and probably even
Yeah.
more so, is knowing
Yeah.
yourself is loving yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
Another one, because obviously spirituality is a part of it for me. We talked about that, and I have some of that in my notes. You said it was okay to ask God how he sees me, but I also have to know it for myself. Otherwise, I won't believe him anyway. Just like the
Mm-hmm.
just like the gift
Yeah.
givers,
Yep.
the moms
Exactly. I
and
mean,
dads.
because God is from the time we were conceived and born, God's been speaking to us and loving us and, being with us because He knows us. So He's like how you felt about that listener's question, how you felt sad that she would see herself
Mm-hmm.
that way. I know that's how God sees us too, that He's like, He made
Right.
this extraordinary creation that's like His prized creation, and He looks at it as a masterpiece. And then we say, what if it's not beautiful? What if it's not a masterpiece? What if it's corrupt? What if it's
Or
broken? What
I've
if it's
tainted
not?
it. I've
Yeah,
done
what if,
too
oh yeah,
much.
what if I've ruined it? Exactly. And I
Yeah.
feel like He has the same compassion for us and empathy for us, that He's like, I see you for who you are. So when we can't see ourselves, it's so hard for Him. And then it's also so hard for us to receive it.
Yeah.
We might be
Hmm.
old in our intellect, but again, when we go back to our emotions and our child brain, we're not receiving it.
Right. Yeah. So, if someone's thinking like, okay, I'm kind of getting this. What do I kind of do? What do I kind of do next? And it's what you do next is it's about the knowing and discovering, and it's about comforting pain. So
Yep.
identifying that pain, the remote
Yeah.
control exercise, the compassion words
Yep.
to, start to thaw yourself out a little bit,
Yeah.
do the meat tenderizing. And then as I worked through that, the next thing you had me do was an exercise called How Am I Seen?
Yeah.
And let's just talk a little bit about that exercise and kind of just describe how it works.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah. So it's an exercise that includes about 20 something words that are identity words, not just actions or behaviors. They're words that are not necessarily related to what we do, they're related to who we are. So when you get that list, you're sending it out to like 10 people, and you're having those people send back a word that they see you for who you are versus what you do. And the reason why it's so valuable is, yes, we need to explore and be aware of ourselves, but we all know, myself included, that when it's you, sometimes it's harder to see things. Sometimes it's harder to agree with even what you might see. But when you have others that know you to some capacity, or care about you, giving you back words of how they see you, it helps be a mirror in front of us, sometimes to see parts of ourselves that we can't see ourselves. So we're
Hmm.
pulling from the resource of other people's perspective about us, kind of along the same lines of like, if you've judgment inside, you'll project that. If someone has love inside, if someone knows you, they're going to project that back to you. So they're projecting back to you how they see you as if a mirror. And when we look in that mirror and we see that characteristic or attribute of who we are, we're able to then be able to see it more clearly. And then the goal is to be able to receive it more strongly.
Yeah, it's easier for them to see that because they don't
Yes,
have that internal, they don't have our internal pain, which is
exactly.
skewing our view of ourselves. Because
Yes.
our own internal pain skews our view.
Yep. And sometimes it's hard to see. So we're reaching out to others to help give us a mirror to be able to see ourselves.
That adage that you can't see the forest through the trees is so
Yeah. Oh,
relevant here.
definitely. When you're in it, it's so much harder to see.
Yeah, yeah.
I know. I've
So
even had people be like, "You do this for a living. Like, you know this. You created the compassion method. Why can't you see it?" And I'll be like, "It's so hard to see when you're the one in it. Can I do it? I do have awareness, like we're talking about, but there's still times where I can know it inside and out and still be in an emotional place that I'm not able to maybe I can kind of like see it like vaguely, but I'm not able to see it enough to actually until I do the same exact process that we're talking about for the listeners that are listening right now. I have to do that process to be able to see it for myself too.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I think that that exercise is really great, and we'll include a link to that on our landing page.
Okay.
Editing guys, you'll have to. I think it's already there, so
I think it might already be there too, but we'll
I
double
think it's
check.
there. We're gonna double check that, and but yeah, if you want to find that exercise, just go to triggeredandtrue.com, and there's a link to download free resource, and that's one of the free resources. So
And I have
yeah,
one more activity if it's okay to add to it.
for
If you
sure, a
want it.
new
Yeah.
one, one I haven't done
uh,
yet.
yeah, probably. I mean, I think I've kind of shared it a little bit, but not like an official activity, but now it's official.
Okay.
Is if you're still struggling with the whole fact of like, you don't know exactly how you feel about yourself. Because some people, they feel like, nope, I love myself. I would love to go back to one of the first things we talked about on this episode was the fact that we are going to whatever we have within ourselves. If we have self hatred, judgment, we are going to project that on someone else. Is to go through and for like maybe like a week or a couple days, pay attention to how other people are affecting you as far as where are you judging people, where are you seeing people as, messed up, not doing well? Where are you venting? Wherever you're
Hmm.
venting, wherever you're seeing judgment, where whoever's really annoying you, whoever's really frustrating you, write down why they're frustrating you. And then take that and turn it back to yourself. What
Hmm.
part of me has self judgment that I was
Right.
judging this person for their actions? Sometimes it's hard to see what's within us because it's so easy to see it within someone else. So, however you're judging someone else, you are judging yourself. So, pay attention for a week of all your judgments, and you'll see that that's actually within you.
There's a little mantra to go with this too.
Ooh,
But
what's
but
that?
but this mantra is very triggering. And this is something you've said.
Uh-oh, no, just joking.
And it's actually the is actually kind of it's kind of interesting this came up because it was kind of my idea for our next podcast. But here's the mantra that'll help people with this. I'm just going to warn everybody this is triggering. Okay. Trigger alert, trigger alert. But the blamer, you know where I'm going with this? The blamer is always responsible.
Always,
So if you
always
find
within
yourself
us.
blaming
Yep,
someone, no matter how justifiable it is, no
yep,
matter how right you are, the blamer is always responsible.
yep. It's always within you. Whatever you blame anyone else for, it's always within you.
Yeah.
And it's actually, even though that can be very triggering, especially when we have all of our justifiable reasons for that,
Yes. Right.
it is in the end, at first it's very triggering, but in the end, it's actually more empowering because if you can take care of why you're blaming within you, the other person's actions and behaviors don't have as much power over you.
Mm-hmm.
But it's hard to go through that, especially when people have done things have happened that are justifiably wrong.
I found that I found that when someone's triggered, it is not a good time to share with them that the blamer is always responsible.
No,
It's
no,
like,
no, no,
when do we
no.
share this? Because it's kind of like it is very freeing. I'm like, how can I say this in a way that's not so offensive? Because
No, when you're right in the trigger of it, it feels so justified and so valid. And you're right, it is justified and it is valid, but it's still
sometimes,
hurting me. Yeah, exactly. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it is irrational, but
yeah,
many
right.
times it can be
Be very
very
rational. Yeah, you're
justifiable, very
right.
rational, but it's still
They
within
did they
us.
did this, and this to hurt me,
Yeah,
and then like
exactly.
five other thises,
Yep. Oh,
and
and I'll add one more thing to it. However you're blaming someone else or judging someone else can be both how you blame and judge yourself, but it can also be a lack that you have within you. So sometimes we're
yeah.
blaming, like I'll use an example from me. Like one of my sisters had come from a big family. And we were trained not to have as many needs, not to ask for very much because there's so many of us financially, practically, emotionally. So you really take your needs down because there's not enough to go around. Well, I have one of my sisters. She was born this way. She just is like, we always call her a princess because we're judging. And we
Yeah.
call her princess because she asks for her needs. She picks the most expensive thing on the menu. And sounds like, like I thought when we were growing up, oh, she's so selfish. Like she just, says what she wants and she, doesn't even think. But there's so many of us. She needs to think about us. But I realized that was actually a judgment that I had because I had need and I had lack. And it
Hmm.
made me upset for her to get her needs met and for me not to be able to get my needs met.
But who's responsible for getting your needs met?
Me.
You.
And so, and I actually realized it was okay that she was asking.
Right.
A mom or a dad could say, no, I'm sorry, we can't get that. But she was actually healthier asking, and I could ask too. So the same judgment that I was judging her, I actually turned it around to take care of myself in the same way. And I
Hmm.
would say, like, what would that sister do? She'd ask for it. So I started learning how to ask for it. So instead of judging her, I connected it to my lack. And then I actually started to learn from her
Hmm. That's a good example.
because it was within me. It wasn't about her. She wasn't wrong for asking. I mean, even if she was wrong for asking, why did it bother me? Because I didn't have what I needed. And it hurt me to see her getting what she needed. And I
Hmm.
wanted to shut her down and judge her and criticize her because I was actually in lack and I was hurting.
Right. Well, this was great stuff, Laura. So two powerful pieces of homework for everyone as you're
Mm-hmm.
going through this. One is engage the how am I seen if you haven't already done that exercise. And if you have, maybe pick some new people and send that list of
Yeah.
words to some new
Yeah.
people. So it was great for me. It was definitely great. The how am I seen exercise was great to see some of the similarities, but then also the differences. And some of the
Yeah.
differences, like one was an employee, a former employee that I sent it to, and he came up with something that kind of blew my mind. And he connected it to one particular experience he had with me that I remember vividly. And I'm like, wow, that was really cool because it was just another perspective. Like he saw me in a
Mm-hmm.
different setting than maybe some of the other
Yeah.
people saw me in for that thing to come out.
Yes.
So,
Yes. And that is definitely what you want to do. Send it to a variety of people.
yeah,
So
don't just
different
send it like
angles and
to all your
perspective.
classmates or all your
Yeah.
family or,
Yes.
um, you know, uh, yeah, yeah. So,
Or even just like people that are, that will give back to you what you want to get back to you. I've even chosen people that I'm like, I
see,
wonder
I
what that
chose and
person really thinks.
I chose a former employee instead of a current employee because I was
Yeah.
like,
That's good. I like that.
yeah, the former employee is like, I don't give them a paycheck
Yeah,
anymore.
exactly. They can be honest.
Yeah, they can be very honest with me, and
Yeah.
it's not going to come back and bite them. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So that homework, and if you don't have that, you can find that free resource on the triggeredandtrue.com website. And then the other thing that Laura just introduced was kind of being aware of where you're finding yourself in judgment or blaming others,
Yeah.
and turning that back around to yourself.
Yeah. How am I judging myself? How am I in lack? And that will be sometimes a clear signpost than what we try to figure out on our own because we're in the middle of
Yeah, and hopefully you're not triggered right now when you're listening, so that when I
it.
say the blamer is always responsible, you don't want to like reach through the, you know,
Oh, I
electronic
know. I
universe and
didn't,
strangle me.
as much as I say it and I 100% believe it, and I've seen some people get free from it, it's still hard, like it's still hard sometimes to really it's like kind of a hard pill to swallow sometimes, especially when you're in a trigger.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you, Laura. And we wish everybody the very best as they continue on their own personal journeys, as you all continue on your own personal journeys of discovery and learning to discover who you are, who you were created to be, and comforting the pain that has you skewed and the lack,
Yeah.
the
Yep.
pain and the lack that is skewing your vision of who you are. So thank you again, everyone, for joining us. Until
Yeah.
next time,
Thanks,
goodbye.
everyone. Bye.
Bye bye.